Hi, I'm Kylie Roberts.
And I'm Mel Wunwell, and we are Shift Unlimited.
We are both qualified executive coaches, coach supervisors, and trainers of NLP and coaching. The world is a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous place. Every day we wake up to a new surprise. Uncertainty is chronic, instability is permanent, and disruption is common. This is the new normal. The game has changed. It's time to rip up the old rulebook. It's time to define success differently. A shift is happening. The shift is unlimited. We need leaders to live more purposeful lives and to lead more impactful businesses. In this podcast series, we will be doing a deeper dive into many facets of living and leading in this modern world, from founder to scale up, right through to leaders of global established organizations.
We will explore how we can be more holistic and authentic as we connect more deeply with ourselves, our relationships with others, and the wider world. In this podcast series, we'll engage in conversation together on topics that support the modern leader.
We have one wild, precious life to make change for good. And whilst change is daunting, so is staying the same. Let's begin.
Welcome to this podcast focused on rapport building and rapport building at a level beyond the obvious. So shall we start by exploring what do we mean when we talk about rapport? Because when we ask the question of the people that we're working with, everyone has that word in their lexicon. It's just that different people describe rapport as something different. So just making sure we're on the same page here. So did you want to share a bit more about the definitions we specifically refer to, Kylie?
There's so much more than finding a topic of interest that two parties are interested in, like the game on the weekend. It's so much more than that. So some of the definitions of rapport that we subscribe to is that rapport is a state of trusting and openness, that it's a state where there is a feeling of closeness and safety, that it's a state where people are less critical of ideas and suggestions that are offered to them, and also that rapport is a state where there is a perception of likeness and liking. We will come to this in the episode. It's a place where my unconscious mind says to your unconscious mind, like me, therefore I like you. So it's a state of likeness and liking. So rapport, it can happen one-to-one, two individuals. It can also happen to many. So if the leader is presenting on stage and there's many people in the audience, the leader can build rapport with many people at the same time. And rapport can also happen and take place with many to many. So one group of people with another group of people. Rapport building is super important in business. And let's talk a little bit about the reasons why it's so important in business.
So the business world today is so connected. We've already talked about the fact that it's VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. So that most of the challenges and problems that we face are much more complex than they used to be. And so the expression, many minds are better than one, really comes into play. So whether we're solving problems, finding creative solutions, building high-performing teams, winning new clients, achieving stretching goals, invariably we need the support, the connection, the help of the people around us. Leading talented people, we really need to connect to them at a much deeper level. These days, people really do choose the leaders that they can connect to, that they want to follow, and the ones that they're inspired by. Having open conversations relies on a level of connection so that people are open to hearing what we have to say. And also being able to get that level of closeness and trust where people will really share what's important to them so we can help them work through and see their full potential. So rapport is the heart of all of these aspects of how we live, how we lead, how we connect, how we have relationships with people. I think a final quick thing, Kylie, is the levels of loneliness and lack of connection are much higher today than they've ever been because of the fast-paced world, how many times people change jobs, move different countries and towns and locations. So actually connection is such a special thing. When we get it, we feel we really value it.
Yeah, connection in person versus social media, and a perceived connection on social media, which is they think one of the causes of loneliness. So we can connect and get rapport with people if we find that they're from the same town as us, or a similar background, or school, or maybe they support the same sporting team as us, or they have a similar hobby or interest in common. And that's easy ways for us to build rapport at a level. But in business, it's really important to connect with a really broad, diverse range of people. So the example you gave before, Mel, where it's really important for people to feel connected to their leader. A leader is building a very diverse team these days. So it's almost impossible for a leader to build a team of people who all support the same sporting team. So it's really important to connect at this deeper unconscious level with people, whether they have the similar background to us or not. We can build rapport with them at this unconscious level. So it's just not enough for us to find likeness and allow that to be the way in which we build rapport anymore. It does seem to work for most people, though. So, what have we got to say about that one now?
So there's a lot of evidence now around how much more effective diverse teams are. As a result of that, leaders do, as you say, need to be able to connect to people from different backgrounds, different cultures, with different things in common so that they are building the best team that they can around them. And also, a lot of rapport is happening at a much more unconscious level. So, have you ever found yourself in a situation where you've met someone for the first time and it feels like you've known them for your whole life? Or other situations where you've met someone several times and you just can't click with them. So, these are examples of rapport happening at a level that is a lot less conscious. So, at this unconscious level, that's what we're going to be exploring, how rapport can be broken at an unconscious level, and also how we can connect at an unconscious level so we can build rapport with so much broader a group of people. So, what creates rapport? Well, we've been building rapport our whole lives. Many of us just hadn't worked out why rapport is so easy with some people and so much less so with others. What's going on at the unconscious level that means we click with some people and we don't click with others? So there's been quite a bit of research that's been done around rapport and communications. Did you want to share a bit more about that, Kylie?
So, one of the findings in research that Richard Bandler and John Grinder, the founders of NLP, discovered is that when people are like each other, they like each other. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a conscious likeness, it's just a connection that you feel that you have, and a level of engagement that sometimes we can't even describe or explain. There were two studies done in the 1970s about how we connect and how we communicate and how we create rapport. One was done by Professor Birtwistle in Pennsylvania, and the second was by Albert Mehrabian in the UK. The findings of both studies are very similar. Professor Birtwistle's research suggested that 60% of our connection with someone happens through our physiology, our body. Professor Mehrabian found that 55% of the connection that we have with someone is through our body language. He also found that 38% was the way in which we say our words, so the how, and that 7% was the words that we use. So therefore 93%, 55 and 38 happening of rapport is happening at an unconscious level. So if we sit down and find things we have in common with another person, we're actually only using 7% of what we have available to us as human beings to connect and build rapport if we're relying solely on common interests or finding things with our language that we have in common. So it's really valuable for us to learn and understand more about that 93% that creates connection and rapport. That is our body language and our tonality. So Mel, would you like to talk a little bit more about how can we build rapport using our body language?
We can build rapport using our body language in a number of different ways. We can become more aware of our energy and are we pushing out positive energy towards that person? Our thoughts, are they positive with positive intention? And that seems to be picked up on. We can tell if we walk into a room and there's a bad atmosphere. People say that it just felt wrong. So being aware of energy can becoming more instinctive can be one way of doing that. And then there's matching, mirroring, and crossover mirroring. Just share a bit more about what that is. So if we start with matching, if we're matching someone's body language, it means that if they were, for example, to lift up their right arm to reach for something, then we would lift up our right arm as well, so that we're matching what they're doing. And it could be that they're reaching for a cup and we just reach and pick up a pen. So that's one example of matching. So where they do something with their right hand, we'll do something with our right hand. If they scratch their ear, then we might scratch our cheek with our right hand. Mirroring is if you imagine there's a mirror between us or a mirror in front of you, it's doing the mirror image of what someone's doing. So if they raise their left hand, we would raise our right hand in a mirror image response to them. Or if they're tapping or shaking their left leg, then we would shake our right leg if it was crossed over and just diggling away, as some people do. Then there's crossover mirroring, which is, for example, you're being a mirror. Now, we are doing these things at a level of body language unconsciously a lot of the time. So if you go into a pub and you see a couple, for example, or two people, two friends who are really in rapport with each other, you'll notice that as one picks up their cup to take a drink of tea, the other one picks theirs up at the same time. Or one person throws their head back and the other person puts their head back at the same time. So all we're doing is making an unconscious thing conscious so that we can be more choiceful and mindful of what's happening here. And it's the same with crossover mirroring. We can watch it and see it happening, and we can observe it around us. The most important time to be aware of body language and using techniques like mirroring and crossover mirroring and matching is actually when we don't feel we've got a connection to the other person and we really want to get a connection with them. That's the time that we think it's really powerful tool to use. Did you want to share a bit more about the voice tonality, Kylie?
Yeah, definitely. And on body language, you and I will often talk about this in leadership offsites. If we've got an executive team that we've taken on a retreat or an offsite, and we introduce this concept of building rapport at a level of body language, at points throughout the offsite, we will just ask everybody to draw their attention without moving their physical body, what they see and notice in the room. And they'll notice that quite a number of people are sitting in the same way that they're sitting. So this is happening at an unconscious level all of the time. If you're in an intimate conversation with somebody and you're really enjoying the conversation, both parties will tend to lean in towards each other. So mirroring the leaning in. And once you start to become curious about body language, you spot it, you spot it everywhere. And it's great to be curious and it's great to be spotting it. So yeah, the 38% of the connection that we have comes from our voice tonality. There are 5 different things that we can listen out for and that we can match. The first one is tonality. So we can have a low or a high tonality. The second is speed. You can speak quite slowly or you can speak quite fast. So you can match and mirror on the pace at which somebody is speaking. The third is timbre, is a level of distortion or clarity when somebody speaks. If they've got a deep, throaty, husky voice, that's a timbre that's quite different to if they've got a lot of clarity and elocution to their voice. The fourth is volume. If someone is speaking quietly, then you can match and mirror the volume that they're speaking at to build rapport. Or if they're speaking loudly, And so if you think about two people in an argument, they're actually quite often in rapport on tonality, voice tonality, because they're in rapport on volume. So they'll be matching and mirroring the volume at which they're speaking in. And then the fifth area that you can listen out for to match on voice tonality is the origin of where the voice is coming from. I know myself, like after I've been for a hard run, if I try to speak at the end of that hard run, my voice is a little high pitched and it's coming from my chest and my throat. Whereas maybe after a good yoga practice, my voice is coming more from my stomach. So we can match and mirror and build rapport on a level of voice tonality on all of these aspects of tonality, speed, timbre, volume, and the origin of where we're speaking from. Mel, what else would you like to add?
It's staggering that words are just 7%, that's what the research worked out. Words are just 7% of how we build rapport. And still we can use them more elegantly. I know we're going to talk about that in another podcast that we've got, Kylie. There's just a few things to mention about words. So we can match keywords that people are using. So if someone, for example, uses a particular word quite often because it's a word that's important to them. I'm trying to think when you hear younger people using quite different words to describe things that people, certainly my generation, use different words. If we want to connect more, we can use words that the other person is using. Content chunks as well. So some people will talk in short chunks of 3 or 4 words and then they'll take a breath and they'll speak again. And other people will, you always laugh at my super long sentences, Kylie. I'll speak forever and ever without pause and taking a breath. So we can listen out for content chunks. So that's the chunks of content that people use to describe what they're talking about. And there are lots of other things. We'll talk about sensory preferences and how we use words around our 5 senses. So lots of things we can use to build rapport and connect. And I think the important thing to mention is it increases our ability to connect with more people so that we can build more diverse teams and more diverse friendships and still connect at a really special level with people. It enables us to, if we're not in rapport with someone, we've got a whole raft of things that we can pay attention to so that we can start to connect, get a better understanding of their words. Thank you very much for your time today.